Okay, it's rap pack to my pulse flat. We keep it real, no false rap. I got 4 cars and they all black. Got 4 bras and they all that. We call that ballin'. Doing this is my calling. Flow is so appalling. My phone off and she calling.
What's going on, internet, and welcome back to Nth Level Entertainment, the most awesome series, comic book and movie related YouTube channel in South Africa. I am your host, Zwele Tumashangu, aka Z the Entertainer, and welcome to episode 12 of my 50 greatest movies ever made review series. Today I'm going to be reviewing a movie called Hachi, A Dog's Tale, or The Story of a Dog, depending on which country you watched it from. This is a foreign language film that starred mostly an American cast, but it was actually not released in America for whatever reason. And it's a true story, but it's a remake of a story about a Japanese man and the bond that he had with his dog. The American remake includes it's a bit different, the telling of the story. And it stars Richard Gere as the man in the title role. Well, not the title role, the dog. The name of the dog is what's the title? Hachi, Tale of a Dog. Don't worry, stupid me. And Richard Gere plays the role of the man who actually has this bond with the dog. So it basically follows the story of a dog which is mistakenly delivered in America, and its owner is not there to receive it. And Richard Gere's character, his name is Parker, I think, who is actually a professor at a local college, finds the dog and takes it home with the intention of actually soon finding its owner and eventually returning it to him. So time goes by, and he procrastinates and hesitates in actually making an effort to find the owner, and he eventually forms a little bit of a bond with the dog. His wife, although initially does try to protest this, eventually also develops an affection towards the dog, and he eventually becomes part of the family. So Richard Gere's character eventually visits a friend of his who is in fact Japanese to try and help him track down the owner of the dog. And he sees the collar on the dog that has a Japanese symbol which apparently translates to 8. And in Japanese culture, the number 8 is synonymous with good fortune or luck. And and the word for it, I think, is Hachi or Hachiku. So Parker eventually decides to name the dog Hachi. And going forward, he realizes, like, him and the dog develop this routine of the dog walking him to work and then walking home after he gets to work, and then he comes back at a certain time to actually pick him up from work, and they walk on train tracks together all the way home. So years go by with the dog actually staying with the family and then developing an even deeper bond. He basically becomes one with the family, as the kids grow up knowing the dog, this and that, so on and so forth. At some point, when his daughter, Parker's daughter, actually comes to deliver the news of her being pregnant with her at the time, I think, fiance or husband, Richard Gere then goes and celebrates with the daughter, and Hachi is left to feel a bit jealous because the daughter is now getting so much more attention than she usually does compared to him. And he acts this out the very next day when they try to walk to work together, but then he decides to sulk and only pitches up at the last minute. So it's a very touching story. It gets very heartbreaking towards the end, because midway through the film, Parker actually dies of a brain aneurysm while teaching in a class, and they try to relay this information to Hachi, but he doesn't quite get it. And for 9 years after the fact, he keeps on going to the train station next to the college to actually wait for Parker to walk him home, and still not getting it whenever people tell him what has actually happened. Until on the 10-year anniversary of Parker's death, his wife comes back to town to finalize the sale of their old house, and he actually sees Hachi, now elderly and still waiting at the very same spot that he used to wait for Parker for before they would go home. This, of course, makes her overcome with grief, and she spends some moments with Hachi while she waits for her next train, and then goes and visits her grandson and her daughter, and actually decides to tell him the story all about Hachi and the incredible relationship that he had with her late husband. So the story actually ends. In fact, the entire story was a narration by Parker's grandfather, who told her, basically it was one of those public speaking things that they do in class, and they pick a topic and they tell a speech about it. So he decided to talk about his favorite heroes, and his favorite hero was always Hachi. So the movie basically ends with him concluding the story to the class, and some of them who were actually teasing him about the story in the beginning ended up holding back tears and being overcome with sadness and emotion. So it's quite a touching story. I wouldn't say it's the best movie I've ever watched, but it is one of those that I'd rank quite up there with it's a great date movie, and it's a touching story in that it showcases the value of companionship and loyalty, and the most unlikely places one can find loyalty, and maybe also not to underestimate the bond you have with certain people in your life who you might not think are that significant on the surface, but might play a much deeper role in your life, or for some reason, or for some reason for you to learn some sort of a lesson in your life as well. So yeah, great movie. Ironically, it was directed by someone called Lasse Hallström. Go figure. But yeah, it came out in 2009. And if you haven't seen this movie, I recommend you go see it. It's quite the feel-good movie, despite the slightly depressing end. It is a heartwarming film. So yeah, that concludes. The rating I give this film, based on the emotional content, is a solid 8 out of 10. It isn't exactly my cup of tea. It's not a comic book or sci-fi action adventure, but it is a very well-made movie, and it tells a very compelling story. So yeah, that's my rating for this film. If you haven't seen it, I suggest you go see it. And that concludes my review for it. Post your comments down below, comment freely. Let me know what you thought of this review, or of the movie itself if you've seen it. And if you enjoyed this video, please go ahead and click on the thumbs up icon and leave me a like. If you'd like to see more from Nth Level Entertainment, please click subscribe, and be sure to click the bell icon so that you are notified every single time I drop new content on the channel. Otherwise, everybody, again, I have been Z the Entertainer. Stay awesome, take care of each other, to infinity and beyond.
Hey guys, thanks a lot. If you want to see some more from us, click here or click here.